All right, I guess we should just see if we can turn this emo riff into like something more grunge, and I think we need to add a little bit more distortion to do it. We can do this though, we got this. What's up y'all, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Sunday Riff Refinery. We're on episode 9 at this point. Kind of crazy that my attention span has allowed me to do 9 of these, almost 9 of these. We're about to finish number 9. And today's episode is kind of special because we actually do have a sponsor today. My first sponsor on the channel. I've done a lot of paid videos and everything on here, but today's video is going to be all about emo, grunge, and really going for the vibe of an artist called Slowjoy. If you haven't checked them out, they're linked down below. They're not the sponsor of this though. The sponsor of this video is Fine Classic Plugins. And to get the sound that I'm going for, we're going to be using their Vintage Vibe amp sim. We're going to be using their saturator plugin, and we're going to be using their dynamic drums VST as well. All of that is going to get us to where we're going, and I'm actually going to show you a final mix in the end too, which is something I haven't done yet on here, so I hope y'all like it. Let's go ahead and jump into Logic here and check out the Vintage Vibe plugin and go through the first guitar tone. So the first part of this song is something very, very simple and strummy, and I wanted it to have a clean but dirty kind of feel to it. So if we bring up the Vintage Vibe plugin, this is what we've got so far. Very basic settings, and it sounds like this. So to get that sound, we left everything almost at noon on here. So bass is up a little bit, mid is up a little bit, treble's brought down. If we go over to the pedal section though, we have overdrive, reverb, and delay on, so everything is on at the moment. We brought the input on the overdrive pedal down though. Tone is left about the same, bias is left the same, output is pretty well cranked on here. We've got some basic reverb settings on here as well. I didn't really touch the high pass and low pass. They're just both moved ever so slightly on here. Set to the spacious hall, mix is not very far up, thankfully. And then on the delay, I left the delay alone. I did not change anything on here. I just turned it on, and that's the sound that we got. It's a very, very subtle sound that's almost hard to hear at all. It's very much a very subtle slapback even. I don't know, it's doing something that I like, so I left it on. If we go back to the amp section here, I want to note that I do not have the doubler turned on. So that's everything that we've got going on for the guitar tone itself for this first part. But if we go over to the clean guitar bus that I made, I do have the saturator plugin going. So we have the adding warmth to guitar preset. I loved the way that this sounded. So let's turn it off. This is what it sounds like without the saturator plugin. Now with it, so you can hear it's mainly the saturation and then the input gain doing some compression there. If you watch the VU meter over on the right, we've got a good bit of movement happening over there. We do not have the transient designer on because this isn't a drum or a percussive instrument at the moment. And that's it. That's all I'm doing for the clean tone here. We'll get into the mix bus and things like that later, but it's all I'm doing for the clean-ish tone, hence why I named it clean-ish over here. So that part's really simple, and what's cool is it actually rings out for the last part of this riff. So if I play that riff from beginning to end, it's... So that little harmonic there at the end is probably my favorite part of the entire song. If you go back and listen to any of Slowjoy's songs, this is a very common theme that he has within some of his writing, is those transitions that lead into the next part of a song. Starts out the song with a really nice clean intro and then uses some sort of a drum fill or a harmonic or something to go into the next piece. And to be honest, I did the same thing. So if we listen to this in the context of my mix here, you'll see what I mean. All right, so that was a little bit of a spoiler going into the next piece there. And that little drum fill plus the harmonics is just a really clutch transition. It sounds so good and it's intriguing, right? I just can't get enough of it. So now we go into the distorted guitars. So let's get out of the clean guitars. Let's get into what people know me for, which is my dirty guitar. I don't know why I have that typo there. So for the dirty guitars, I called it dirty-ish because for me, dirty guitars mean high gain metal tones, right? And that's not what we're working on today. So if we go into the Vintage Vibe plugin again, you'll notice that very, very much similar settings here. But if we go over to the overdrive, we have the input cranked quite a bit more on the overdrive this time. And that's going to allow me to get the tone that I wanted out of it. Delay is turned off, but I did leave the reverb on. And then you'll notice over here on the bottom left of the plugin, there's a plus 15 dB button there. And that's what I've got turned on at the moment. So if we go ahead and play through this one, That's what we're working with now. So we've got a decent amount of gain and breakup and everything happening there. It's not high gain by any means. It's really just enough for the song. And with it double tracked, it sounds really, really clean. So let's listen to the way that this sounds going into this next part. So aside from the vintage vibe on the dirty guitar tone here, we also do have an instance of the saturator plugin yet again. This one is going to brighten and crunch the guitar. So if I solo the dirty guitars and let you hear it without this, and now with it, so you heard the volume did raise a little bit on there as well, but what this is doing is definitely brightening up the high end of it, but in a pleasing way. It's not like making it hairy or harsh or anything like that. So that's doing a little bit of lifting there, and then I do have a tiny bit of EQ happening on the bus for these guitars as well. So we have a high and low pass filter like always. I do have a decent high shelf, about 2 dB at 5900. And then I've just got some spikiness that I pulled out. And those are something that I do on every single guitar tone. Not necessarily those exact spots, but this is always something that I go through. So let's listen to the guitar tone without that EQ, and then we'll bring the EQ back in. So to me, that's a pretty night and day difference there. There's some upper frequencies that I just really didn't like. And to be honest with you, I might not even notice what I did if it hadn't been for A and Bing it back and forth. But because of that, I do prefer it with that EQ. And that's it for the guitars. Guitars aren't doing anything else on there. So now you've obviously heard the drums and everything come in there too. So we need to kind of cover the other instruments, right? So let's get into the bass next. All right, so for the bass, I have my Squier Affinity Jazz bass with the Seymour Duncan quarter pounds in it. And there is a bit of a mod going to the preamp section right here. It's not an active preamp or anything like that. There's just a lot of different series and parallel switches, and I don't know what any of them do, but I've got it set up in a way that I like the tone out of this jazz bass right now. And I think it must be running in a single coil mode because I did have to turn on the Sentry noise gate just to get rid of some of the buzz because of the way I have the knobs and everything set on here. But believe it or not, we are using the guitar amp sim for this. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the bass tone, and then I'll show you what I did to it. So very simple bass tone. It's got a little bit of breakup to it, right? If we go and open up Vintage Vibe yet again, we've got the bass just default setting, and we've got the bass cranked on it. Mids are left alone, treble is cranked up as well. Brought the output down just a little bit. If we go over to the pedal section though, I did turn off the reverb and the delay. And then I've got the input cranked just so slightly. Bias is left alone as well, and the tone is brought down. It was a little bit too bright if I cranked the tone, and it was bringing too much of the low end out of it. Then we have their saturator plugin yet again. So we have subtle saturation turned on for the saturator plugin. And that one is doing a lot. It's a bass preset inside of there. So let's go ahead and turn it off and let you hear. And then we'll hear it with it back on. So lots going on there, and it's just giving it that extra bit of oomph that it needs. If we go into the little EQ that I dropped inside of here, I am bringing out a little bit of 1690 and 2880. So those are both being dipped out just because there are some harsh frequencies. I have a high and low pass filter on there as well. And then I do have Submission Audio's double tap. I throw this on every bass track that I do. I don't know what happened to the interface just there. But double tap is clutch. It does a lot of work for the compression and leveling out everything for the bass. And that's it. The bass is very, very simple. So let's go ahead and listen to the bass performance there soloed. So that's the bass, very simple, right? Now we gotta check out the drums. All right, last piece are the dynamic drums. So that is the drum plugin from Fine Classics. This is a great little plugin because it's different, you know, it's unique. It's not the same drum plugin that everybody's using, that good one that everybody loves to use. Great plugins, by the way. I don't hate on them at all, but it's nice to be using something that not everybody else is using. So inside of the plugin, you have a really cool small drum kit that I wish every drummer would play live with, because man, if you've played live, you know that it sucks helping a drummer set up a full-size kit. So this kit consists of, right now, you've got a kick, a snare, the two toms, and then you've got a variety of cymbals here as well. actually really love those toms and the way they sound. So I left things mostly alone in here, but I did mess with the snare a little bit and the room mics as well, just because things were coming out a little bit too harsh once I started adding saturation and everything to the mix. So the snares brought down considerably, as you can see, and the room I brought down a little bit as well. If I click on the room, you'll notice that everything up here is still raised quite a bit. I do like that I can bring down the individual mics if I need to. And then the EQ, left that alone as well. But on the snare, I messed with the envelope, the saturation, and the effects on it. I just wanted a little bit more of like the reverb and things like that to the snare close mics, just to add that much more in the mix. So that's the drums themselves. If we listen to them soloed, so that's what they sound like with everything else that I've done to them, which isn't much. Now, if we go over to the saturation plugin yet again, I did one of the drums presets on there and just adjusted it very slightly to taste. And so without the saturator plugin, we've got this. So you can hear it's really starting to crunch that snare a little bit. It sounds a little bit trashy soloed, but sounds really good in the mix. In my opinion, you can let me know if I'm completely off base there. And then Flatline 2 from Submission Audio, because I just wanted to clip that signal, bring everything up. So if we listen to it without Flatline 2, so adding a clipper at the end of your drum bus can always help so significantly, especially once you've gotten everything mixed properly. It really helps it to not hit your mix bus too harshly, which, speaking of, let's go ahead and dive into the mix bus now before we listen to the full song. So for the mix bus, I have two plugins. I did not EQ the mix bus at all, and you'll see why, because my mastering chain is EQing a little bit. And so what we've done is we've added the saturator yet again. We have the more lively and bright mix. So let's go ahead and turn that off and listen to it, and I'll turn it back on. So it's a very subtle effect there. There's a little bit of a volume rise happening there as well, which is kind of being squashed a little bit by the Townhouse compressor, which I have next in the chain here. Townhouse compressor, I threw it on my mix bus chain once a long time ago, probably 2 years ago, and I've always used it ever since then. Once you just drop it in there once and start messing with the threshold and the ratio and everything, you'll notice that it's a very pleasing mix bus compressor to use, and I have no clue if I'm even using it correctly. I just like the way it sounds when I dial it in the way I normally dial it in, which I did have to change things a little bit because I don't usually write this style of music. So let's go ahead and listen to it with it off, and then I'll bring it back on. So that's the way that that came out. That's the entire mix bus. I know that that is not anything impressive. I know that's not crazy, but that's what we're listening to at the moment. And if we go and listen to the last piece of the puzzle here, so let me close everything out. If we go and listen to the JST Maximizer, this is what I always have going on my master bus, because I'm not good at mastering, and there's a reason people pay other people to do it, but I need my mixes to be loud and sound good. So what I've got going on right now is I've set it to 16x, so that way it is using as much CPU power as it possibly needs to sound great. I've got the 3-band clipper setting chosen on it because if I go over to the spectrum here, I can adjust each of these individually. So if I pull down the treble, for instance, I pull a half a dB out is usually what I'll do. If we go back to the waveform view though, you'll notice that I've got the bass signal, or the bass spectrum, I should say, set to mono at, 101 hertz. So anything below 100 hertz is going to be in mono. Makes it sound better through speakers, makes things a little bit more focused and less muddy, sometimes depending on the speakers that you're listening to. I like what it does when I'm listening to it through headphones, and so that's why I do it. I do have the bass enhance cranked up to 16%, low-end compression at 19%. I leave the crossover mark alone. I don't ever use that because I don't really know what it's doing, and when I mess with it, I don't like what it's doing, and so I just leave it alone. I do have the sauce set to saturate, so this is another saturator. This is on the master bus this time, obviously, and that's adding just a bit more saturation there. I have the character of the clipper set to 8%, so it's still pretty hard of a clipper, but it's a little bit softer than it normally would be. And then I have a lot of gain added to it. So let's go ahead and turn this off, and you'll hear how much volume is being added because of the JST Maximizer. So what you'll notice here is I'm clipping a lot of the signal, most of that being the snare, some of the other drum pieces as well, but it's clipping quite a bit, but it's still not distorting. The JST Maximizer is a great plugin to use for this, and if you've gain staged, I know everybody hates that phrase, but if you've gain staged well enough, you're not going to get a ton of distortion by clipping the signal like that. You're just going to allow yourself to bring up the volume of your track overall. So we're peaking somewhere around 6 LUFS right now, which is fairly loud, and it still sounds good, it still sounds musical. You can see on the screen that I'm not completely smashing that yet, so that could go even louder, and we're not going to push it any further than that. I think it sounds great as it is. But that's it, so let's go ahead and listen to this song that's inspired by Slowjoy, using the Vintage Vibe plugin and the other plugins from Fine Classics Plugins. That's a lot of plugins, man. But everything's done in the box on here, nothing out of the box except for the Sentry noise gate that I used on the bass because of the noisy pickups that I'm using at the moment. And let me know if you like this new format for the Sunday Riff Refinery. This is obviously a lot different, a little bit faster and quicker for everybody instead of my 30+ minute videos I was doing before. But if you like the old format, let me know that too. I'm definitely not adverse to going back and doing all of that as well. So let's go ahead and do this final playthrough, and stay tuned for next week because I'm going to be adding more to this song and possibly some vocals too. We'll see. I don't know. But let's go ahead and listen to the playthrough of this real quick. Well, that was it. It's a really simple song, and I'm having a ton of fun writing in this new genre, or new for me. And I know I'm probably going to piss some people off by calling that emo, or calling it grunge, or calling it post-rock, or post-punk, or post-hardcore. There's so many damn genres out there. Let me know what genre you think this is, because that'll help me go for a different style of vocals for it as well. Right now, I'm going to attempt some Slowjoy style vocals, and we'll see if I nail that or not. You'll find out in the next episode though, for sure. But make sure to check out Fine Classic Plugins. They're linked down in the description below. It is an affiliate link, so if you use that, it does help me out a lot. And until next time, peace and love, and I'll talk to you all soon.